There we are. We are live. All right. Hello, everybody. I'm going to just click over here on Instagram. As we know, that usually takes a second here. You have to wait for it to feed over. There it goes. Mute that. We don't need to hear me in the background talking. All right. So hello, Allison. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm really excited. Hello to everybody who is on here, whether you're joining us live, whether you're watching this recorded. We really appreciate you taking time out of whatever part of your day it is to listen to what we have to say and the great conversation that's about to follow. Super excited because I actually obviously had this on the calendar already, and then I saw somebody posting about some success that they had with Allison, somebody that's a mutual connection of ours. So that got me even more excited because I had some questions already that I wanted to ask, and that just triggered them in my head. I was like, all right, slow down. You can only ask a few questions. You can't go into 50,000 questions. So with that, again, thank you for being here. So Allison, why don't you tell everybody who you are and what you do?
So my name is Alison Deyette, and I spend kind of 50% of my life on camera working for a variety of different television programs, from KTLA Morning News, which is the #1 morning news program in Los Angeles. And I've been doing that for over 17 years. And then I also appear on national shows like the Kelly Clarkson Show and The View and the Today Show, all the way to working with QVC and HSN on camera for a variety of different brands. So that's 50%. And then the other 50% is I actually work with clients, media training them to prepare them to be more confident communicators, whether it's on camera, on a podcast, on radio, or on a stage. So we get them to that point that they really shine and just feel so strong in their voice, and their visual and the verbal really makes a connection.
Yeah, and there's so many pieces to it. And obviously you've got credibility right out of the gate with all they have to do is turn on one of the episodes of anything that you've been on, and you exude confidence, calm, composure, with approachability, which can be tricky, right? To exude confidence and approachability. So people feel like this person knows her stuff, and I feel like I could sit and have tea with them on the corner and have a nice conversation. So I think that almost markets itself to some degree. But one of the things that I found interesting in watching your social media posts, and just from what I know about your experience, is the broad range of people that you work with. And I know from experience, right? I was a teacher. I had talked on many stages. I'd done workshops. Getting on camera is a different world altogether. And so you really need to kind of be able to coach somebody how to get from where they are and the confidence they have in what they do to how they can be confident on camera. And maybe let's just start with talking about like your wide variety of clients that you've worked with, from professional athletes to like solopreneurs. I mean, across the board, finding out what people need, where they're at, and how to get them to the place where they feel really confident and comfortable in the audience they're trying to reach.
And that's really the excitement for me, because I started my career as a journalist. I worked on national magazines and print publications for countless years. And I was very fortunate that not only one day I might be interviewing Jim Carrey and spending the day with him, because I had my own interview column, to another day being with the CEO, to another day actually being on a photo shoot. So I was very lucky. I got to travel the world on photo shoots and directing shoots. And that just became a natural progression for many of us to be on camera. And all of those areas of really working with a team and collaborating led me to a natural transition to work one-on-one with people or with groups. And for me, because I've now done the media training for over 11 years, I didn't want to be a niche. I didn't want to say, oh, I only work with CEOs and in corporate C-suite positions. I wanted to work with a diverse clientele, because I've been exposed via magazines and television to such a wide range of people. I wanted to bring that expertise to that wide range of people. So for example, I work with professional athletes, and I will always do kind of a group media training with NFL players, and then we work one-on-one, same thing with NBA players. I will tell you, my husband says every time I come back from an athlete media training, my adrenaline rush I get, it's almost as if I've been on the court with them, because I get so jazzed up. I kind of connected because with athletes, and I'm an athlete myself, that there is a drive, there is a focus. And once we get past a group training and we get to the one-on-one with athletes, they have that moment that they feel like I can be vulnerable because I'm in a safe space with Alison, that based on the training we did, that I can now talk to you about like what I feel my flaws are, or how do I speak to my coach, or if I'm headed to the combine or the draft, how do I make that better impression? And for me, specifically with athletes, what I've incorporated into the training and what a lot of agents and managers really embrace for me to additionally do is I include case studies of other athletes, because I tell them, listen, just because you're spending this amount of months on the court or the field, there's extra months in your year that you should be strategic about getting more exposure. That exposure leads to a bigger paycheck. And you have to think strategically about how you're going to extend your career when your professional life on the court or field is done. And so I talk about athletes that are well known and how they're making various investments. And we do case studies. And I talk about athletes after the fact when they've retired. And I tell them, listen, some of them, it's not sexy. Some of them, one guy owns 5 UPS franchises. It's not like, but he is making a good living.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah, I'm sure.
A former NFL player owns a winery and he does collaborations with vineyards. So there's so much opportunity out there for them that I stress that think beyond the actual sport and how you can propel your career continually through the rest of your life. Now, when it comes to TV shopping experts, that's a whole different genre. And because I've spent over 13 years working on QVC and HSN and behind the scenes, I can help people create their messaging. And because you could be on camera for a solid hour selling a phone or a smoothie mix.
Right.
And it's all different about how you make a connection to an audience, millions of people, and say how great this phone is and how it's going to, it's what we call problem solution. And you definitely bring out your thesaurus and find lots of various adjectives to talk about it over and over again, because we have to think about how there's someone maybe in the kitchen cooking dinner, or there's someone putting their kids to bed and that QVC or HSN is on in the background. So they're not necessarily watching a solid hour. So you got to bring back your messaging again, wrap it back around. And then for the rest, like celebrities, I'm usually working with them when they're going on press junkets and they just want to sound cool and fun to hang out with, and while they're talking about their movie or TV series, or when they have brand partnerships, and how can they go on, say, a morning news program, promote that TV or film, but also somehow talk about Zyrtec allergy pills within the conversation that seems authentic. I mean, most of us know they are promoting a brand and they're getting paid big bucks to do it, but there are ways to integrate it into your storytelling. Yeah. And then there's just the one-on-ones and groups with CEOs and solopreneurs. I've worked with a lot of doctors, fertility doctor, clinical pharmacists working on HIV studies. I just worked with the first female film composer for Pixar for Inside Out 2. She was incredible. And we just worked on how would she be sitting on a panel and talk about, and also being on the red carpet, promoting the film, and her being that first female. And while it's fantastic, she's the first female film composer, but she has been working with Pixar since 2007. And it's how do we get to that next message where it's not always the moniker of first female. It's you're the best at the job. And I've even worked with music directors and DJs and CEOs. So I personally love having that range because it's always teaching me something new. Because my job is I have to learn about the person and the brand and the company before I even get to the point of media training, and then take your messaging and give it back to you in ways that I believe are going to most enhance your message and make a connection to people.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
So that was a lot.
It's a lot, but it's great. I mean, there was no really way to condense that because, again, and I was, from kind of like forming a connection with some of the stuff that I do, in the sense that, like, whether you're helping somebody with media training, marketing, or whether you're helping somebody to create a project plan or a life plan, et cetera, at the core, the first thing you have to do is get to know the person, where they're at, where are their
Right.
strengths, where are the things that they're struggling with, and what is it that they hope to achieve? Because two people could come to you with the same question, but the end goal is very different. And so you have
Very
to figure
different.
that out. And I
Right.
think that like there could be almost a misunderstanding with people. They would think like, well, if a celebrity is like, let's say it's an actor or an actress, right? But they're on stages all the time, whether it's behind a camera or whether it's, live on, I can't think Broadway. I couldn't come up with
Mhm.
Broadway, believe it or not. Whether they're live on Broadway, they're on a stage, they're performing, but it's very different when you're talking
Very
about
different.
yourself. Like I
Yeah.
joke about with people, if you put me on a stage and give me a topic to talk about, I can very confidently speak. I can even speak like anecdotally about things from my past, but when I have to start talking about me and why I'm successful and why you want to work with me, I get tongue tied. And
Right.
that's a lot of these people, specifically with athletes, they're preparing to be doing interviews and be seeming really composed and be able to speak about how they performed in their sport, but also like what are their characteristics that make them the person they are. Because to your point, that's what's going to make a brand say, I want to work with that
Right.
athlete because they
Right.
have something about them that's very natural and very authentic.
Right.
And so when you're working with across this very broad industry, you've got to consider all those components. Like, where is this person coming from? Right?
Exactly.
Are you going to hone in on the fact that the athlete's got that drive, and so you're going to make it very much practice regimented, or are you going to talk about the fact that it has to do with memorization, like an actor or an actress might? So all those different pieces. I think it's really fascinating. And for you, so I'm kind of curious because do you find when you're coaching people, do you think about the things that have worked and not worked for you personally, or do you think more about the things that you've had other people do? Like, what drives the
It's
philosophy you use?
it's really that combination of what I've seen other people do and kind of examples of how, like, if it's an athlete, I will actually share, this was a really great interview, this was a fail, and let's move on past that. But because I've had so much experience in the entertainment industry and talked on stages for AXA Financial and Bear Stearns and HBO Max, uh, and been on stages with, with 7,000 plus people in the live audience with Britney Spears before lots of things happen. Um, but I
She's
bring all
talented.
that I bring all that experience to it. But I connect with plenty of other people just to get their input and see how they've been working, and have even followed some other media trainers who specifically say work with athletes and read some of their materials about boosting their confidence in being supportive rather than coming from a fearful place.
Right.
And I will say a lot of times when I'm one-on-one with people, it has surprised me even more recently that some people break down during the process
Mm,
and they'll start crying and they'll apologize for crying. And that's the first thing I'm like, stop apologizing. Stop. What is bringing up? Because we find that there are blocks and moments in our life that could have happened 20 years ago that still, when an opportunity or something comes up to be self-expressive, blocks them. I had a
mm,
client that had shared with me that, and this is about 20 years ago, that she was dating a guy from a very wealthy family, went to the family's home and was at their vacation home having dinner, and they were having this great conversation, and she wanted to include herself in the conversation. So she started speaking, and the boyfriend turned to her in front of his family and said, "What are you saying? Find your words. Why are you acting so stupid?" And she was stunned and embarrassed. She said she still actually stayed in a relationship a few more months and then assessed and said, "This person is toxic for me." But this was 20 years ago, and it came up in our conversation because she said, "I'm going to be sitting on this panel for International Women's Day, and I want to sound eloquent and share my knowledge." And mind you, this woman is incredibly smart and she's won all these awards. But she says most of
right.
the time when she goes to accept an award, she just says, "Thanks so much." And she walks off the stage. And she said, "I would have never known that that was a block from 20 years ago that she said, I haven't even thought about in so many years, but now it bubbles up." And
Yeah.
I had another client also bring up that they felt that they never had a chance to talk about themselves. They didn't feel that they were worthy or important enough to share with others. And I used to be like, everybody has a story. Everyone has somewhere they've come from. Everyone has a story to express. And let's just find those, get past those blocks that are holding you back, and find a way, whether it's even you're out with a group of friends and you feel like they're talk, 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 and you're trying to be sweet and look for the pause. Like, if you can't get into that conversation, ask a trusted friend what's going on. Could they help you next time to say, hey, Janie has, I know I was talking to Janie the other day and she has a great story to share. Or I feel sometimes a touch.
Mm-hmm.
When you are close to people, just a light touch on their arm, their shoulder, their thigh, gives a moment to the person that you've touched, takes a breath, and that's your moment to engage.
Yeah. And I think it's a little bit, and I don't, the word recovery, because that makes it sound like you've done something terribly wrong. But like
Right.
when you stumble or when you say, I couldn't find the word Broadway, right? I could have then been sitting here the rest of the call going like, oh my gosh, how could I not come up with the word Broadway? But you kind of got to remember that when you're talking to people, people are making mistakes all the time. We stumble over our words. We say silly things. I have a little video I made of like some silly things that I said. I sometimes I listen back to my chats and I'm like, I don't even know what I'm talking about. Like, you ramble. We all do that in conversation. But when we lean into it, or we, just kind of make it part of the, like, I'm aware that that's happening, it definitely, it eases people around you, and it also makes other people around you more comfortable. So it's kind of reminding people, which it sounds like you're doing, right? Like, if there's somebody's going to say something or a thought that you can have, that like in that moment, when you trip over the words, it doesn't mean the coaching has failed and I've now ruined this. It means you just keep going. Right. Like, and that's what they teach people in acting. Keep going.
Right.
Just keep
going.
Keep going
Exactly.
forward, work through it.
I do, when it comes to live TV, you never know what's going to happen. And you do have to kind of go with the flow. I mean, I put up a video recently sharing a story from many, many years ago where I cursed on live television. It was a mistake. And it was just because the word sounded, it was an alliteration of a C and a C. And I said of city chic, I had said city chic. But I instantly, rather than, now the anchor got stumped. His mouth was open and he's like, stopped. I immediately just said, well, you know what I mean, city chic. And I kept on going. Yeah. Because in my head, it said, I have a finite period of time to complete this segment and I have messaging I want to get across. So I'm going to take the lead. And afterwards he said, thank God you did. I was totally stumped. So I do tell people, if there is a flub or you get stumped, take a breath, take a pause. It's a conversation, and then get it back. Because I jokingly tell people, I call it the racing brain syndrome, where our head and our mouth is not connecting. Either like one is racing, either like, blah, 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 and your head is trying to come up with something, or your head is trying to come up with something and nothing's coming out. And that's where I'm just like, take a breath. We're all human people. We're all vulnerable in moments. But I try to get to a point where they have prepped so fully that they've realized no matter what they're talking about, they're the true expert with it.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, again, it's an unsexy moment when I tell people, when you have something to share, whether it's on a podcast or on TV or anywhere, walk around your house and say it out loud, because when you can hear it, you can correct those moments of, oh, I kind of sound boring. I'm sounding very monotone. And you can look for the excitement to inject in how you're speaking. I say, look in your bathroom mirror and say it as well, to see, what are your facial expressions? Do your eyes light up, even if you're not smiling? Can you give what I jokingly call the look of love without saying it, but showing it in your eyes? And then I say, listen, put in AirPods, walk around your neighborhood. If you've got a dog to walk your dog. Also say it aloud, and people are going to think you're talking to someone on the phone. And you won't have this, they're thinking I'm talking to myself and I'm cuckoo. But
I mean, I walk around without earplugs. Yeah, I was going to say, I walk around talking to myself all the time. So, and I just roll with it. But it's, I think what you noted too about live, because some people had said to me like, oh, what made you choose to do your format live as opposed to like you could pre-record them? And I'm like, you pre-record it, then you go back and you're like, well, I can take that little section out because I can edit it, right? You start, and I'm like, I wanted to really put whoever my guest is and myself out there completely as we are. And then people know, like, this is the person, right? There's none of that. I
Right.
mean, obviously you do
Right.
censor yourself a little bit, so you don't say things like
Right.
city chic, but for the most part, again, it's like you're speaking and people are capturing that moment. And I have found that it's impacted the way that I communicate, because the more you put yourself out there and go, what I say is okay. Nothing terrible is going to happen if I make a mistake. I can correct myself on camera. I can call out mistakes I make. I can say, oh, you know what, that didn't make sense. It develops that. And I think even the interaction that I have with the person, because it's not being recorded, it's live,
Right.
just feels much more natural to me. But I do think it's, it sounds like you're doing, it's about communication, about effective communication. And there's so many different versions of communication. And whether you're trying to sell something, whether you're trying to educate somebody, whether you're trying to connect with somebody, maybe you're trying to do all of those things. Maybe you're trying to learn something. All of those different ways require us being very self-aware of where the areas we've struggled in the past, right? Where did we go
Right.
off and not being able to effectively communicate? And we can think of many times in our lives where that's happened, where there's been misunderstanding, and it's either because we've been mishearing or we've been misspeaking, or the other person mishearing or
Right.
misspeaking. So it flows over into other areas of our life. So now, how'd you get into this? Was it like, was it a natural flow? I mean, obviously you mentioned some of the stuff you had started to do and how you transitioned into
Right.
this, but like, let's go back to like young Alison. Was she somebody that was like loved to be in front of the camera?
So it wasn't in front of the camera. I knew before I even headed to college that I wanted to study journalism.
Okay.
I was a writer, and my intention was, I'm going to be a writer for national magazines, and I'm going to be in New York City. And I lived right just outside the city, so I said, that's what's going to happen. And it is what happened. I went to school. I was one of the editors of the school newspaper, and I was already getting published in the Hartford Courant in Connecticut. I worked for WFSB, and I was the only person who was a paid assistant producer. Everyone else that I knew in college were interns. And that's where I had actually met Gail King. And here's my little fun story. So Gail King is working at WFSB. I'm there, and I was working with the investigative reporter, and we were covering investigative stories. And there was a time the phone rang in her office, and she said, hey, Alison, can you go grab my phone? And I pick up the phone, and it was Oprah. And my life came full circle, because I have been when Oprah had her talk show, I was on her show 3 times. So it was my favorite moment, the first time I was on Oprah's show, to say, Oprah, you're never going to remember this, but this is a really wonderful, touching moment for me, because I first talked to you on the phone when you were calling Gail, and now here I'm on your show. And then she subsequently invited me back 2 more times. And I worked on her first set of Weight Watchers commercials at her home in Montecito, her compound in Montecito.
How cool is that?
Yeah.
Now, so when you were on her show, were you on her show talking about, like, what was the premise of the conversation?
Predominantly lifestyle and fashion stuff, because I was working for magazines and also working on television, doing every shows from moving to makeover. There's a little flub. 10 years younger. I was working constantly for the Today Show and Good Morning America and The View. And so her team invited me on 3 times to do various segments. And one of my favorites is I was there during a blizzard. And Tim Robbins and Susan Sarandon, who were life partners at the time, were in a movie, and they were circling. Their plane was circling, and they were supposed to be landing to do her second show, because many cases you're not doing shows 5 days a week. You're doing some live, some taped. And they said, Alison, can you stay longer? And we're just going to create something. So I was like, sure. So we created a runway, and there I am with Oprah. And we randomly chose people from the audience to come up and do a runway model walk. And I had to talk about their clothing and their outfit and their look, and also talk about what I would change. It's very daunting with an Oprah audience.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a girl who was wearing the most prestige white leather Keds and this bright teal blue tracksuit. And Oprah's like, not sure I'd wear that, And I said, did you change those white shoes when you got here? Because you guaranteed you're not standing out in that blizzard outside with those white leather Keds. And she said, oh, no. I changed when I got here, brought them in a bag. And, I just said, listen, I love the tracksuit color. It's fun. I said, but maybe I would keep that to workouts and errands instead of a show. And then there was one woman who had the most beautiful figure, and she was just covering herself up with oversized clothes. And I made a comment, and even Oprah said something, and I said, yeah, Oprah, you can get away with saying anything to your audience. I need to know where the emergency back door is when I leave, because they might come after me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess if you volunteer to be on the runway, but I mean, it gave me not the good kind of goosebumps for a moment there. Thinking about that, I was like, ooh.
I just keep everything. Yeah. Everything. I'm not malicious. And whether I'm media training you or maybe we're talking about your image, it's more about let's question why and why the decisions were made. And I'm here to boost you, encourage you. I tell people, think of me as your best neighbor, your best friend, like your new best friend that has no competitive nature towards you. I only want you to look good and feel good. Right. And because I tell people sometimes when you're asking certain friends advice, first think about the friend you're asking that advice of, because they might unconsciously be in competition with you. They might not really be there to boost or support you. So you can have a load of friends that you go to for various reasons, but know the ones you intrinsically trust for those moments when you need, hey, I need to share something and feel vulnerable. What would you do?
Right. Yeah. Well, and I think, and it's hard too, because there's there are things that would look great on you or in certain settings, like you were mentioning, where you wear it here and there. And I think obviously at the end of the day, I want people to feel confident they can make the choice they want to make. However, if there's a specific message that you want to, or a vibe that you want to give off in a specific setting, there are going to be particular types of outfits that are going to help do that. And it's just, it's a reality thing. There are certain colors, there's certain poses, the way that you do your hair. I was for a large portion of my life, very insecure about the fact that I don't have a great fashion eye. I used to joke and call myself hair illiterate because my hair was either up like this or it would be down. Today, I had planning. Our washing machine went. It's been chaos here. It's totally fine. It was just unexpected, and we're trying to. But I was like, I'm at this place now where I'm like, it's okay. I'll get on with my summer hair and my, not feeling completely poised. But I do think that while that's okay and that's good, when you walk into certain rooms and you want to, again, like I just said, when you want to create a message or you want to leave a certain type of impact, you do want to know what are the colors and the outfits that are going to be for you, right? Like there are outfits that I can see on a friend and I'm like, that looks amazing on you. That would not look good on me.
Right. I tell people like every trend is not for every body, like your physical body. Sometimes it doesn't work. And to what you were saying, that it is about a message. I mean, when I talk to people about the visual, the verbal, and the vocal, the visual is the first that's seen, and it is judged the most. Yeah. And I've worked with younger influencers and younger people entering into corporate America, and they'll say, no, I should be able to wear whatever I want. And I said, for the most part, I agree with that. You should be. But, and here comes the but, you are being judged by the people who are hiring you and the people you're going to be working with. Get in the door and be there in that environment for a while before you start making those changes of what you love. Because you don't want to feel ostracized, nor do you not even want to get in the door because you're so stubborn about it. Right. Get in the door and make changes while you're there. So I loathe kind of as a progressive woman sometimes to say that, but that truly comes from asking so many other people in these various industries their advice. And I've even had other people like coaches come to me and say, I said this to, and it's usually female. I've said this to a female client that I was coaching, and she did bring up that she should be able to wear whatever she wants. And he said, I felt as a man that I didn't want to feel like I was diminishing her. And I said, I would have said the same thing, that you are being judged first. And it's awful that we're judged that much.
Right.
And particularly women judge so much, but get in the door and make changes. Get in
Yeah.
first. I'm not saying that you have to wear, going on an executive interview, a white shirt and a navy blue suit. There's
Right.
still plenty of ways to spice up your look and add a little zhuzh, but get in the door first and then hit them when you're in there.
Yeah, first impressions, right? I mean, I have 3 teenagers, and I mean, we talk about that, right? First impressions, and I do think, like, you think about certain clothes that you put on to feel comfortable. You put them on to feel comfortable, right? You've got that pair of pants and that t-shirt or that hoodie that you put on, and you're, like, ready to, like, be on the couch with your book or watching some TV or whatever because they make you feel more comfortable. So there is also a mindset that comes with when we dress certain ways, we also do get ourselves into that mindset.
Right.
And I do think that it's hard to make sure that we're balancing that with, like you said, making sure it's not saying like, this is what you have to do in order to be this, but right now, in order to kind of meet people where they're at, right? Meet the people in the room that you're going into where they're at, so that you can make those changes and impact that. What's your favorite, like, go to, like, that you say, like, you can wear this and it fits in almost any setting other than maybe like the Grammy Awards? Like, what's your, is it you like power suits? Is it for a woman? What's usually a good, like?
Personally, I'm a dress gal. So probably 90% of the time when I'm on camera, I'm wearing a dress.
Okay.
To me, it's easy peasy, one and done. And usually it's brighter colors or prints.
Okay.
Because I will tell people, hey, if it's your first few times on TV or something, avoid black. You want to be seen as more approachable and friendly.
Okay.
I know black is such a safety color for so many people, which is great, but wait a few times. Wait a few times, embrace some color. And I also just want to back up just a second to say too, I do want us to all start breaking more barriers. And I've had plenty of people come in and say, oh, she's that age, she should be wearing that. My thought is, if you look good, do wear it. I don't care if you're 75 and you want to wear a short skirt because you love your legs, do it. So don't feel confined. I tell people, don't feel confined by age and don't feel confined by certain trends.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that you noted that. I do think right now, particularly in the media, at least it seems, and I would say, like, even in the, the culture I'm experiencing in my vicinity of places that I'm going, right? It seems like that's changing a little bit. Part of that has to do with the fact that the 90s trends that were like my trends are now back in style. So I'm like, I'm just rocking my trends. Like, you guys are you're just catching up, right? So
let me just say, when it comes to trends, everything is cyclical.
Oh, sure.
I spent years going to all the fashion shows and working with my team, and we would sit there kind of in a conference room and we at magazines would determine what those trends are based on what we saw designers doing, and then a few years later we're like, oh, that's come back again. But it's purely just what the designers bought certain fabric from some mill in Italy and how they cut it. And some things I wouldn't embrace coming back, but
my skinny jeans are not getting thrown away because I'm like,
oh no, I'm keeping them. But I love a wide leg purely because it's the comfort.
Yeah, from a comfort perspective. But I just think it's funny that it was baggy, skinny, baggy, skinny. There's some iterations of it and stuff. I laugh because it'll be like mom jeans, and my daughter's like, "Those are not for you," and I'm like, "They're literally called mom jeans."
Yes, it came from an SNL skit. Oh my gosh, yes. So young people, they just don't know.
Yeah. And I'm finding my way, and I'm finding my own, my own style. And there's times where I'm like, I try something out to be a little bit more exploratory because I was historically not. So I'll try the sparkle or I'll try the leather pants. And I'm like, yeah, that didn't feel me, and that's okay. It's definitely a learning game. And I was a late bloomer with it, and I'm still navigating my way through what is going to make me feel confident and give off the message that I want, and other people are going to see me the way that I want to be seen. And I think that's a learning process. How do you feel? You mentioned before patterns on camera. So that's interesting because I know that a lot of times they'll say, like, try to avoid patterns on camera because it looks like it's moving, and I noticed your shirt's got a pattern, but go ahead.
It's because we now have HD. So prior to HD, most patterns would moire, and there's still some very thin stripes and tight patterns on blazers and shirts that moire a bit and get fuzzy.
Okay.
But for the most part, everything's in high def. So you can wear those prints and patterns. Yeah.
That's cool to know. That just opened up a whole area of my closet for the next time.
Yes.
I'm like, well, guess what,
Yeah.
shirt? You don't need to,
Sometimes if you're wearing like all white, it can be too strong because it's high definition. Of course, with high definition, there's the moments of like, oh my God, my wrinkles.
I know, every pore.
Oh my God, my wrinkles are showing more.
Like, well, yeah, and again, and got like today where I'm like, I literally I put on some facial moisturizer, planned on getting ready, and then was doing stuff. But I think this is a different platform, right? I'm not on the Oprah right now.
Right.
So there is the different type of reading the room and reading that situation. But I think, again, the broad scope of the people that you've worked with, the experience that you've had. I'm a writer as well. I loved it. Journalism was one of my, it was like, am I going to do journalism? Am I going to do teaching? And I have a desire for that. And I share your desire to help people bring their best selves to the situation, which is what you're doing. Because when people can effectively stand a certain way, communicate a certain way, receive and give information a certain way, it's going to help them to learn. It's going to help them to grow. It's going to help the people around them.
Oh, yeah. Because it really does affect. Yeah. It really does affect all of their life. I try to work with them to be a whole being, not just so specific to that speaking engagement, but how it can affect them as a whole and kind of dribble into all aspects of their lives. And it's really a joy for me when I do hear back from my clients, say after a panel, a speaking engagement, where I had one client call me from the car afterwards and just said, oh my God, this is amazing. She said, I listened to, because sometimes my clients record our sessions. And she said, I listened to our sessions 5 times while I was in the car each day. And when I was there, I heard you in my head, Alison, while I was sitting there on that panel. But I knew it was me talking for myself and the stories that you helped me be more concise so I could share even more that would help that audience. But yeah, no, it's a joy when people call me and text me and just say, I nailed it. I got in. Or with the recent football players, the 9 that I had media trained, all 9 got picked for the NFL in the draft. And one of them was a number 9 pick. One was a number 20. And so I was texting with some of them, DMing on Instagram, and some of them were writing back, oh my God, thank you so much. I was still thinking of you. And I was talking to one of the sports managers recently, and I said, oh, here's a funny story. My mother-in-law was visiting in town recently, and she and her boyfriend watched the Denver Nuggets all the time. And she said, we were watching the game, and after the game on the court, one of the players, the youngest, like the young guy on the team, came over for an interview, and he's a bit of a mess and sweaty, but he sounded so good. And I just happened to say, so who was it? And she said, oh, Peyton Watson. And I said, I media trained him. And so I was talking to the sports manager who reps him. And I said, what a funny moment that my mother-in-law brings him up. And I was able to say I had media trained him. And I said, mind you,
yeah, that's cool.
My media training is just a tiny part of his journey, tiny part. And the sports manager said, don't diminish yourself. You were an important part of his journey to where he got on that court and sounded good.
Yeah. Sharing your journey, because if you can't share what your journey's been, if you can't show the world everything that you have to offer, that's a loss for us all, right? Because everybody's got amazing gifts, right? So
yes,
if you really want to, we really want to do what we can to help people to share their gifts in the best way possible. And communication is key for that, which at the end of the day, media training is doing that. Yes, it's camera, but again, it carries over into how do we interact with people in person and how do we lean into that. So, all right. So I'm going to get your final thought, but first I want to know, how do people reach out to you? Because now people are like, oh my gosh, this is what I need before I do this keynote speech, or I want to try to get featured on these TV shows. What's the best way for them to follow you? Because again, I've learned a lot just from watching your content, and also, reach out to you to find out about your services.
The best way to reach me is go to my website, AlisonDeyetteMedia.com, or they can find me on LinkedIn or Instagram, which is just Alison Deyette.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I follow most of the times I've seen your posts. I think it's been on Instagram, though I am on LinkedIn as well. And I like because you do snippets of some of your different things. Sometimes you don't even show who you were coaching, but it's a little bit of behind the scenes, and it's really
Right.
cool to get a feeling
Yeah.
for like what that process is like. I love the kind of storytelling component of your Instagram. So I enjoy that. And you give some great tips. All right. So first off, so thank you. Obviously, thank you for being here. But I would like for you to give a final thought to everybody that's watching this live or recorded. What's something you would like them to take with them?
So I'm going to keep it specific to media training. And here's the thought. Here's how you know it's a good interview. Give it a little time, and people will not remember the questions that the interviewer asked you. They're going to remember your answers. Now give it a little more time, and they're not going to remember your answers. They're going to remember the feeling you left with them. So always think about what is the feeling you want to leave with your audience. And that doesn't matter where your audience is listening or watching, but what is the feeling? And I always like to think it's either one of activism and motivation or just feeling damn good.
Yeah, I got to tell you, I usually would end with just your thought. That really resonated with me. So I want to call that out because I am even when I leave a social gathering, I am I shouldn't have said that. I should have said this. I should have, like
Right.
this is since childhood. So I'm working on it. I'm aware of it. It's not like I'm unaware, but if I were to ask myself that question when I leave a room, if I were really just to focus on how did I make people feel at the end of the day? How are people going to feel? I think by and large, I would talk myself away from some of those other things because I'm certainly saying things I feel better about than things I don't
Right.
feel better about. And yet I'm just
Right.
focusing on the things that I didn't like, even though I coach people not to do that. So I
Right.
think that's such a succinct and wonderful way. Down the road, what will people think about how I made them feel?
Right.
That's
Because
beautiful.
ultimately that's for our whole life. Like when we get to the end of our lives,
Beautiful.
we're not going to be thinking about what we did for work. We're going to
Yeah.
be thinking about what were our connections to others.
Yeah, that like literally flows through my poetry book. So you just struck
Right.
right on my heart chord there with that one. I love
Well,
it.
and I will say, Deb, that you are really a person with all your videos and media and social media and stuff. You're an incredible energy booster for people.
Thank you. Thank you. That means a lot, especially coming from you. So that's good because that's my goal. When you were saying feeling, I'm like, I hope I make people feel invigorated and loved. And
Yeah,
which
I
is
really believe you do. Ever since I
thank you.
started following you,
Thank
that's
you.
immediately the sense I get.
Oh, that's very appreciative. Thank you very, very much. All right. Well, thank you for being here. Thank you to everybody who joined us. This was really awesome. Hope everybody has a great day and take care.
Bye.